Right. Hi, Momtellectuals. Welcome back. This is part 2 with Heather. So the first part, if you're here before there, you might want to watch part 1 because Heather talks about her decision around deciding not to have children. And this is a really important topic to me because I want to help women feel more successful and confident. And my Paradox of Success book is coming out soon. And I really think that, and we're going to go into the topic of, you do have a firm idea of what success, what you want your life to look like, but it doesn't match what you get told you ought to want. So having resilience in the face of pushback, because I think that that's going to be, I was joking about my book too, but I seriously think that's a second part of the journey. Is the first part is sort of questioning what you get told, because often for me, my situation was I checked off all those boxes and I still hated my life. Like I did. I'm very glad I am a mother. I love my son very much. So that wasn't something that, it's more that it wasn't enough.
Right. You wanted to add something more into the equation, to more dimension. Yeah.
So I mean, but I talk about my own journey in my book and everything. So, but I really think that creating your own personal definition of success, because you're not happy with what you've been told, then the next step is going to be, well, what do I do? Because I'm going to get pushback about this. And you were mentioning that you didn't so much get pushback from people really close to you. Maybe you can go more into that. I think some of us will get pushback from people really close to us. But there's also this higher level cultural assumption. There's how people are in movies, and there's also like what strangers ask you, like, how many times have you asked a stranger, how many kids do you have, right?
Totally. Yes.
I'll let you take that away, because I can tell it by your expression on your face. Oh, that one rang a bell.
All of it. Like, I don't even know where. So there's subtle pushback and then there's overt pushback. Yeah. So I'm going to take the part about even people close to me. I would say that even with my mom would make inferences, like there'd be inferences that, okay, if she doesn't have kids, then that means that she'll take care of me when I'm older. And she wouldn't say that outright, but it's sort of like this, oh, she has all the free time in the world. And then you would get this translated into employers. Employers think, oh, well, you don't have kids, you can work extra hours, you can work from home, you can take work home, like you don't have anything else in your plate. So there's this almost like stereotype that and I'm like, well, the reason why I don't have kids is because I do want to have a work-life balance, and I have other things that I want to achieve, and I have other, like, I'm birthing books, I'm birthing volunteering, I'm birthing, like there's other things I care for than just kids. But there's sort of just this blanket presumption that if a woman doesn't have kids, she has nothing else really that's really that important. Like, I mean, even in her career, it's like, you need to make your career number one, or you have kids. You can't have, like, what else would you do with your time? So there is this element of perpetually having to defend my time boundaries, my energy boundaries. I'm perpetually needing to say no and not feel guilty. And like that, they'd be like, well, and then again, the big selfish word, right? Oh, she's so selfish. Or, oh, she's so self-centered. Oh, she, like all of these things. So there's that kind of, as soon as they find out you don't have kids, there's a whole bunch of assumptions that come with that, right? So they would assume that they first will give you pity, like, oh, I'm so sorry. And you're like, no, I'm so happy. Like, I'm cool. We're cool. We're good, right? So they'd be like, oh, and it's like, it's okay. And I know that goes into the childless thing, right? Where people can't have kids and they want to have kids. But it's like the assumption that if that's right there, instead of going, oh, well, did you want them? Like, it's not the next thing out of the mouth. So then there's the other piece around, okay, she has all the time in the world, or people assumed that I was lesbian, right? Or they assumed that, which you can nowadays be in a same-sex marriage and have kids, but it's not even as common, right? But there would be this assumption that, like, they made all of these assumptions about my life. Or, well, if you don't have kids, are you gonna, like, would a man want to marry you? Like, there'd be all of these things. Well, what are you gonna, and then the other one is, what are you gonna do when you get older? You know, are you gonna, who's gonna care for you? I'm like, well, I'm hoping PSWs and caregivers, like most people, and hopefully I'll have money to afford that, because I don't know if my kids would be the best to care for me when I'm in that stage, right? Like, it's just this, I'm like, all of a sudden I see all the reasons why people have kids, and it's not actually about having kids, right? It's about the security. It's about the, you know, I don't want to be alone. I want to know what love feels like. Like, there's all these layers that have come in where I'm like, well, that's not a good reason to have kids. Or that's not a good reason to have kids. Like, I couldn't understand the reasoning unless there's people like you, Tamsen, my sister, where they're like, it's my calling. I want to be a mom. I really want to be a mom. Like, I've met people like that where they're like, I just knew it. It was in my body. And I'm like, you are meant to have kids.
But I also don't
I'm not
just
trying to
want
shame
to be a
anyone
mother.
who, exactly, right? If there's more, right? And I would say that I wish our world, because I know as a Western woman, Canada, we have certain rights, freedoms, all of this. Just this goes on with my travels. I'm not trying to be one of these, you know, superior white Western women, but I've been on my travels, and the depths of, like, even in Mexico, the depths of Catholicism and tradition and everything about women, like that whole notion of a woman saying, this is what I choose, is still not a thing for a lot of women in the world, right? And that it's okay to choose. And it's like, imagine if everyone made a conscious, active inner choice for what they want their lives to be. It would just, my God, like, we wouldn't have overpopulation. We'd have women who go, yep, I'm meant to be a mom, and other, no, that's okay. I still have other things to do, and I won't be ostracized by my family, right? Or I won't be.
I mean, right? I'm laughing, but it's horrible that there's truth to that. Like,
so much truth. I've heard horror stories of other women who choose not to have kids, and that, like, their families are like, well, you know, like, what good are you, kind of thing, or, well, you're gonna have to be the aunt, or you're gonna, you know, like, there's this notion that you have to care for something, another human, right? And when you could be caring for somebody in your job as a nonprofit organization, you could be caring, you know, like, it goes on so many different levels. So the pushback that I've had would also came from, like, I would say I've had losses of friends who were long-term friends, and it's just that they did the baby thing. And I don't say it with negativity or anything, but it's almost like they're like, I can't relate with you, Heather. Like, I just don't, they don't say it, but it's like, I'm not invited to the thing. I'm like, and I miss them, right? So there's another layer of, like, I really miss them. And then I would say there's also the other pushback around the feeling of, I put it on social media, talk about celebrations, right? I put a post on social media on my 40th birthday, and it was just celebrating this decision. I went, oh my God, I'm 40, and I did it. I didn't end up having kids. I didn't end up being a single mom, like all the things that I was terrified of becoming in my life. For me, right? That was and I did it. And I was like, yay. I didn't say anything about that it's bad to be a single mom. I didn't say anything it's bad about, I have nothing but respect for people who had the strength to do it. I fully was like, I can't believe that I made it through at 40, because now the pressure is not as much, right? At age 40, I don't get the same pressure. People just assume I have kids. So I just didn't or that if I haven't had them by now, it's, you know, they got lost cause in their brain, right? So I'm like, that pressure is off now that I'm in my 40s, but I still, but I got pushback from mothers in the community who were like, oh my God, why is Heather saying that? And does she hate single mothers? And I'm like, this isn't about you. This is not about you. You do you, I do me. I'm celebrating. This was a victory for me. I could have easily gotten pregnant. I had partners. I could have easily gone down that road. It could have happened. And I know in my heart of hearts that I would have had a nervous breakdown, and it would not have been good for me. Right. I know it. And so it's like, I was celebrating my own knowing, right? Like, but a lot of moms took it personally, like I was criticizing them and shaming them. And I get it, because there's a lot of, our world is misogynistic. Our world will say things about single mothers. They'll say things about child-free women. They'll say things about childless. Like, there's so much negativity towards women. And I get that there's a lot of moms who our world doesn't support being a parent or a mother. It's just, it's like,
which is bizarre that at the same time it's an expectation. It's an expectation, but help with it? Heck no.
right? And it's like, so I would say that the pushback, and I was just shocked. I was like, wow, that was not the community I thought would push back. And then I also got the dudes from Texas who are pro-life, or however you want to call it. The ultimate fundamental right-wing anti-abortion pro-lifer. I don't like that term pro-lifer because I don't think they're pro-life, but they're, that whole thing that, women are supposed to make babies and men are supposed to be men, and this thing, right? And I was just, and so he's like, oh, and he's trying to like, degrade me on social media and, all these things. So I was just like, wow, I get mums from Guelph and dudes from right-wing dudes getting toting dudes from Texas. Like,
yeah.
This is really weird. And I'm like, what an odd combo. And I'm like, so it was a fascinating, I was like, wow, here we are in 2000 and whatever it was when I turned 40, 5 years ago. And I'm still dealing with these issues. And I thought women's issues and gender issues had come such a far way to go, yay, and I
thing is, they have. I mean, we can vote.
Right?
But it's not gone by any stretch.
The dialogue is still,
that's a whole thing. Yeah. But I
know.
I do want to say that I do think that it takes a lot to be a mom, but I also think I see a lot of strength in you for being able to say, I know what I want. This is what it is. I know you don't agree, but I'm doing it anyway.
Right. Thank you. Yeah.
Because because it's really hard to stand up to the pushback of you are wrong, evil, selfish.
Yeah.
You're something.
All the labels.
I call it the crazy, evil, or stupid thing. When someone's trying to convince you of something, the second time they talk slower because they think you just didn't get it because you're a little stupid. But then if you still don't do what they say or believe what they want, you're either evil or crazy, right? And there's that. So that's the closed-minded people who, for whatever reason, are closed-minded. I mean, you can talk about it as a personality trait, as how they were raised, whatever.
Yeah.
But I think I like to think of myself as open-minded. Maybe I'm not as open-minded as I want to think I am.
No, but you're willing to listen and learn in dialogue, right? That's all that's needed. Yeah.
And I think it's really important to bring into respect the fact that other people can make other decisions. Like, we need to, in order for us to be able to be one of those people, I think we got to give it back.
Yeah. No, and it's true. And I would say, and thank you, and I think even what's coming to mind, because I also feel there's a strength, but I've also had enough, I don't want to call them breadcrumbs, but mentors or examples of success. Like, I've had enough of those. So I feel for the women who are stuck in environments where they're not encouraged to come, like they just don't know that there's more. Like, they're like, I don't want to do this, but I don't know if I can do this. And like, I really feel for the women. I got A's, so I felt like I could keep pursuing that. Or I got mentors who saw something in me that wanted to help me, right? So I really feel like I just even want to speak to, even when I started a child-free Facebook group, and I also started a child-free meetup group. And there's certain, like I would say, Guelph, we're lucky to be in Guelph on one level. There's enough of it's a university city. There's enough awareness, right? There's LGBTQ, two-spirited rights. There's all of this idealism, I would say, and that's part of why I also could do this in I think I became this person because of Guelph on one level, versus being in and I don't like stereotype, but small town US, where there's a lot of religious influences. And so on the Facebook group that I was in, this one woman posted how she was being ostracized from her community because she was a grade 2 teacher. She loved her job. She loved kids. But she was on child-free sites, and somebody in the community found out she was on social forums of child-free sites, and they automatically named her a child hater and that she wasn't safe with children and they need to fire her. So she's trying to seek support in a community that doesn't, that's more family oriented, traditional family oriented. And then she's being ostracized because she's speaking her truth. And I'm like, oh my God, like I don't have to deal with that level of pushback, right? And then I feel for the women, and this is what happened at our child-free meetup group. And I was like, as much as there's women who knew they wanted to be child-free, but they ended up becoming mothers because of the pressure. Right. Mm-hmm. And I feel for them because like we would have, when we meet at the child-free meetup group in Guelph, and we'd secretly have women coming to our table saying, what are you guys doing? And we're like, oh, we're a child-free group. They're like, I'm so proud of you. I know that I shouldn't have had kids. I can't tell anyone. Yeah. Because then she would be shamed. She's not safe with her children. Social services need to, like, it's like all of this. And I'm like, my God, can we just stop the misery and the judgment and the shaming of women for what they want to do with their bodies and how they, and this is a big issue with the US Supreme Court thing with abortion issues now, right? So, but I'm like, these are the ripple effect. And she's like, I get women saying, I love my children. I know I was not a happy person. This was not my fulfillment. And I just did it because my mom said I should, my husband, my dad, right? And that's where I'm like, and I want to speak to those moms who are on listening to this, who quietly live with that, right? Yeah. And that I wish there was more space and support for them to process their emotions around that and to go into the truth of it. Because it's like, as you say, like when we can speak our truth authentically, then we can open up the possibility for more. But if we're trying to live a lie, it's almost you're going to get depressed, you're going to get drained, you're burnt out, right? But just acknowledging it, just going, you're not an evil person because you go, you know what, I don't know if this was for me. Like I did it because of the reasons that aren't the reasons that make me happy, right? And to have compassion, because we live in a world that puts so much pressure on women to have to do this, right? Like deep self-compassion that you're not evil or crazy because you're not feeling it.
Yeah. And it's, I think it's a really important, kind of bigger picture thing too. And I do talk about this in the book a little bit, is that I think Brene Brown talks a lot about this too. Like if you can't actually be yourself in a relationship, you will never feel loved because it's fake. If you are being who you need to be loved, the person doesn't even know who you are.
No, exactly. And this is actually the interesting part, because on relationships, like on the part of relationships. So I also never wanted to get married. I was I was like, I'm not, I'm doing my thing. And I was like, I'm not getting married and I'm not having kids. So, because I'm a kid, I'm a child of divorce, right? So it was more about, I don't want to be in a bad relationship. I'd rather be on my own. So I ended up meeting my husband now, who's my husband now. We've been married for 3 years now. And it's perfect because I've done my journey of self-discovery, exploration. I know who I am. I know I've been through relationships. I've been through what doesn't work. So now I've actually met somebody. He was married before and he has a daughter who's now in her early 20s. And but he, when I came into it, I said, I'm a child-free woman. I know you have a daughter. I think it's awesome. And she has a connection to her mom. Awesome. I said, I'll be the cool aunt. I said, I don't need to be the stepmom. And, and I've heard people going, oh my God. So even the part of being stepmom, people are like, well, how does she feel about that? I said, we've had a conversation. She's cool. She doesn't need another mom. Like I get along with her as an aunt, right? Like I'm the older woman. You could be like, hey, da, da, da. And I said, she can talk to me about anything, probably stuff she can't talk to her mom about. And I said, and we can have a sit down conversation and I'll be her aunt bestie, right? So, but it's like, even giving that, like if you're stepping in, I've met women who are like child free and then marry somebody and that person has kids. And I always say, I said, it only worked because she lived with her mom mostly and she was a teenager when I met her. I wouldn't have dated a man who had younger kids because I value the role of parenting. I think it's such an important place, but And I would not want to influence, like, I'd be like, that child would need to bond deeply with me to feel safe and secure. And I can't offer that because I'm doing other things and my emotional energy has to go elsewhere. Right. So, but it's like this kind of, you have to have so much self-awareness and so much knowing yourself and the courage to say yes and no. And have people, like my husband could have said, you know what, that doesn't work for me. I need you to be the stepmom. And I would have been like, I'm sorry, I love you dearly, but this isn't going to work, right? Like it takes courage to let go of something that might be close to your heart. I had to really check, am I being stubborn? Am I being cold? Like I had to check all those things like internally. And I'm like, no, I'm actually the most loving thing is being straight up with somebody and saying, this is where I stand. Where do you stand? Let's negotiate.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, I scared more than one guy who was interested in me by saying, do you want kids? And they'd get this deer in the headlights thing. And I'd be like, I don't know that I want to have kids with you. And I don't want to have kids now, but I was taught you're supposed to get married. So whether I really wanted to get married or I've realized I had expectations about what marriage was that didn't happen, which is a whole other conversation. But
totally,
I at that time I knew I wanted to get married and I wanted to have kids. And I also don't, some people treat sex like a sport or an extracurricular activity, a hobby, whatever. And that is what it is. But I didn't take it casually. So I didn't want to date someone, possibly sleep with them, because my goal was to have a permanent relationship. And so if they didn't want to get married, didn't want to have kids, like, let me not get more time emotionally involved with you if you don't want the same future that I want.
Exactly. It's not fair. Yeah.
It's not fair to me.
No, to anyone involved. And it's manipulative if it's anything different. Like to me, that's also like I hear horror stories too of like I'm on Facebook groups and women will say, oh my God, I'm with my partner of 3 years. They knew I was child free. And now they're like, okay, now I want to have kids, and like making it a deal breaker. And then it's like, they're like, this is not fair. Like this is totally like their heart is hooked, right? And then the game changed. So it's manipulation if you can't respect another person's, what are their future dreams and their goals and who they are, right? And if you're trying to downplay it, it's a type of manipulation.
And I think that's a really important thing though, because I think in some of those cases, we can change what we want. I think that, to me, creating your personal definition of success, part of it is it changes, and that's okay. And I ask people to be okay with that. I figure it's a lifelong journey. But one of the things we've touched on women's control of their own body and being able to make decisions. One of the things so I'm kind of going two places at once in my mind. One is about birth control, and the other is about whether decisions to have, whether you can be really sure you don't want kids and that can change, because that sounds like maybe for some men that happens, for some people I think that happens, because I remember reading, I don't remember where or how long, it was a while ago, but about how women who are sure they don't want to have kids, if they're in their 20s, doctors won't tie their tubes.
Yeah, exactly. That's what happened to me. I was like, I'm ready to,
and that that ticks me right off, because yes, it's kind of not reversible in my understanding. So yes, you are, but if you're a freaking adult, like
I know,
you should be able to make that decision for yourself. I personally, I'll just say abortion's a gray area for me. I don't think it's always right or always wrong. So I would be much happier. I think it's much my judgment, but based on my morals, I think it's way better to do permanent birth control than to risk wanting to have an abortion.
It's traumatic. Yeah, it's awful. Totally.
So, and for women, it is surgery. Like, okay, but it really, like, for me, that kind of encapsulates something really wrong with our society when we don't let adult women say, I really don't want to have kids. I want to take care of this in a responsible way. And to be told by their healthcare provider, no, whether it's an attitude of you might change your mind.
Yeah.
That's what it seems to be.
I know.
Oh,
I know.
no, you're going to change your
You
mind.
haven't met the right
sweetie.
person. Yeah, you haven't met the right person yet,
And
right? That's usually the, and you're too young to make that decision. And I would
Yeah.
say it's just like, I mean, for trans surgery, you have to go through a series of counseling sessions, and you know, it's a massive change, right? So I would say, even if they put in place, you know, why don't you go, like, here's some counseling sessions, talk to somebody about this decision, you know, like just do 5 counseling sessions, assessment, you know, where is this coming from? You know, for some people it could be self-hate. So you want to find out what is the, you know, like, really, is this you, right? And I would say that I would say the cases where I've definitely heard cases where there's a woman who said, I did not want to have kids, I got pregnant, and then I can't believe my child changed my life. I decided at that moment that I wanted to bring that child forward, and I'm so glad I did, right?
Yeah.
So you definitely have those cases where that's the situation. And I'm like, so you don't know ultimately, but I mean, that's the mystery of life, right? Like, the people, animals, beings come into our lives, and we didn't think, you have to be open to be flexible, but at the same, we can't control everything, right, of what happens in our lives. But there's a piece around, I would say, we know, there's a part of us that I think knows fundamentally what feels fulfilling and what feels draining. And so I would even say the women I know who said they didn't want to have kids, there was an aspect of them that they were focused on their career, but there was something missing for them, and they couldn't put their finger on it. And that was the thing that was missing. So, you know, like, it's a complicated dynamic, but I would suggest, and I would also suggest, if you're with a male partner, encourage him to get a vasectomy first, because that's less painful. But I would say the surgery of actually getting your tubes tied is less traumatic than an abortion, and it's less traumatic than childbirth.
Probably.
And, you know, so there's all of these, and we have tons of access to different types of birth control. There's so much there. But I would say, if you're going to live in a world that says, like, say, if the whole part of abortion is wrong, then allow her to choose to not get pregnant. Right? Like
Yeah.
You can't have it both ways. Like, you know, like, you need to give, if she says, okay, well, if abortion's wrong, then I need to get my tubes tied so I don't get pregnant, so I don't have to have a bad abortion, right? Like, you can't have it both ways, right?
And
so
I think partly it's religion. Some religions
Totally.
are very, and I'm not very religious.
Totally.
But I mean, yeah, I mean, I'm of that perspective that, you know, birth control that prevents conception. Yay!
Yeah, I know. I go, why do we want more unhappy people? Like, that's the part about the whole movement. I'm like, why? So you have the child coming into a dynamic where the child isn't wanted. Like, the numbers for unintended and unwanted pregnancies are so high in the world. And then we wonder why we have high suicide rates. We wonder why we have high mental health issues. We wonder why there's high addiction issues. Like, you'll talk to anyone who has felt unwanted as a kid. Like, I felt unwanted as a kid, you know, like that my parents and they're like, I shouldn't have. And it can take a lifetime of therapy, right, to be able to overcome that. And you have to find your inner strength of going, I love and accept myself, even if I wasn't wanted by my parents, right? Mm-hmm. So the damage to society on encouraging people to go ahead with a pregnancy, even if it's terrible conditions, even if it's like, my God, that's expensive. If you want to talk about from economics, then it's also, you know, potential violence, potential, like, all of these things that I'm like, you're really, why aren't we saying we want to have a healthy, happy scenario, like that children come into a healthy and happy home where they're feeling good and loved and wanted, right? Like we need to focus on the being we're creating, not just, right? But it's religion, right? It's definitely, and I'm not, like, I would say, like, I'm somebody that would say abortion's the last resort, but people have abortions regardless if they're legal or not. And that's historical, you know. And so if you're, it would be the, it's definitely traumatic for everyone, right? And it's a ripple effect, and it is awful, right? On an emotional, physical level. And for the ethics and all of that, it is hard, but people were doing it before it was legal. That's why they legalized it, just like drugs and everything else that is awful. Yeah.
Anyway,
So,
abortion is a whole thing, and
it's
I've
a
been
whole
slammed enough because
oh yeah,
I'm not on either. It's a very polarizing issue, and I'm not on either
completely.
end of the pole, and so I'm just like, ah. I've been
totally
harassed enough about not from both sides of the spectrum, and I just the good thing about that is that I have had so many people come to me and say, look, I don't want to put it out there, but it's a gray area for me too. I'm not a, I got to not feel alone and not feel like I was the only one who wasn't. It's clearly always just a woman's choice and clearly always wrong. Like,
right. You can't, it's never black and white, right? Like, and I think it's a health issue, and then talk about the ethics around it, right? And all of the support systems that are in there.
A huge conversation about power.
It totally
conversation about power, and so people understandably get very, very upset about it. So,
but I think it's coming into this conversation simply because I would say people who choose to be child-free are probably more likely to explore abortion, in that sense of like the demographic, right? And so the childless, so we'd have to go back to the terminology. So some people go childless, child-free. And I hear that a lot where people goes, oh, you don't have kids, you're childless. I'm like, no, I'm not lacking anything, right? Childless is a person I feel free, right? So that's the difference. I actually feel free, and I've made a choice of freedom for myself, right? And so children would equal a trap for me, whereas a person who says they're childless is somebody who is probably mourning. They feel like they're lacking the child. And I think there's such a totally different, and then versus the mother who is fulfilled, who's like, yep, this, I feel, and I would say this is that whole part where every woman's, like every experience, like the childless woman could be jealous of the mother. Some mothers can be jealous of the child-free woman. Mm-hmm. The child-free woman can feel, I wouldn't describe it as jealous, but would feel judged perhaps by the mother, right? So like, or the childless woman like feels like I feel when I'm like, yay, I don't have kids, and then there's a childless woman, I'm like, aren't you celebrating?
Well, and I do think from the perspective of somebody who I identify as having been all three at some point in my life. Now, from the time I realized I could have children, I knew I wanted them. I only have one, so I'm mourning that because I only got to have one. Well, I had 3 miscarriages, so I'm technically a mom of 4, but I only get to hug one of them. But there was definitely a time that I wasn't ready yet. So I would say that was my child-free time. Then I went through over 3 years of fertility treatments and multiple miscarriages. So I definitely was childless mentality then.
Yeah, totally.
And now I'm a mom.
Totally.
And it's interesting because part of my own story of finding success is just that my whole life until I had my son, my whole life was, I have at least one more checkbox to check off before I'll be happy when. It was always, I'll be happy when I finish school, or I have to do all these things. Like I have to finish school, finish school, get a career, find the guy, get married, have kids. And it was like, so it was happiness was always something that was out there somewhere in the future. And it's not that I didn't have my fun day to day, but this deep feeling of satisfaction. This is this is my life. This is what life is supposed to be. Right. Like that. Because I was going to ask you after.
Right? Like I was going to ask you how would you, especially because you've written this book, how would you define success at this point? Like now that you've been exploring this topic and.
It's interesting. I really think success is mostly a feeling. And so it's almost, I think the best definition comes from its opposite, because one of the biggest deathbed regrets I've heard is the feeling I didn't live my life. I lived a life based on what I was told I was supposed to do based on other people's expectations. So I want people to not have that deathbed regret, but that like living a life that's true to yourself is definitely part of it. But it's also realizing that's what you're doing.
Conscious of it. Bringing it to consciousness.
Right. There has to be some feeling of, I almost associate it with balance. Like what I call balance is knowing I'm in the right place, doing the right thing at the right time for me. You're not feeling like a victim of the world, or you're in unconsciousness, or you're just going along a script. You're actually going, I choose this. This is what I choose. And it's not doing everything on your to-do list. It's not making everyone else happy. But it's also feeling whole in yourself. So the components I talk about in my book, one is being connected to yourself, having healthy relationships, being connected to other people, and also being connected to your purpose.
Totally.
And I think you need all three of those things to really manage to feel successful. But once you have all those things, and they interweave, it's complex, but having those things, I don't have a short definition, but definitely one of the things it's not is always being happy. But that's what I expected. I'll be happy when, and it's almost like, okay, so if you think of, I think of Oprah, like I like interview, I like doing some of the things she does. So,
Totally.
I think she's really successful, but I think about it and I'm like, do I think she's never disappointed, angry, sad? No, she's got all her feelings. So it's like taking all of yourself along for the ride.
You're feeling really deeply connected to yourself, and you're showing up in such a genuine way, and you're so content with it. This brings me back. Sorry.
I'm just going to say, so there's a lot of things I had to work through about what success wasn't.
Right. Well, and it's what's interesting, because I would say this is where people go, well, what do child-free people have? Child-free people don't have problems. Child-free women, they're free. Right? What's their problem? And I tried to start a business called the Child-Free Heart, where it was focusing on serving child-free women. And even child-free women were like, I'm fine. I'm like, your path has just begun. And I'm like, it's awesome you've claimed this, but I would say there's another layer of healing your inner child. And the benefit that I would say childless and child-free women have, and that's the journey we're meant to take, is that it's about tuning in and heal. Like mothers can do this even through their parenting, right? Like mothers can see their inner child out as a human body, and they can go, and you can hear this with mothers like, oh my God, I don't want to be like my mother. Oh my God, oh my God, I can't believe it would make her cry. Like, but you're working that out on a daily basis, right? Like you're working out the whole thing, right? So the inner child, they say, is connected to our truest self, and not the wounded child, but the true child, the one that gets sparked up, creative, alive, feeling happy, all of this, right? So I describe that my journey is to mother my inner child, and to really get to know and heal any part that was a wounded inner child, and to get to know myself and it's a very invisible thing that a lot of people don't see, right? But I actually take it seriously, and I work through that. This is the part of the true self that's connected to your happiness, your joy, your peace, your contentment. So even a recent realization was like, I've always had the heart of a dancer. Like I was just part of this community dance thing. And after I did it, I went, I've been dancing my whole damn life. Like I was a kid dancing. I liked aerobics classes. I liked bar dancing. I liked, why did I not enroll myself in dance classes as a kid? Or why did I not ask to be enrolled in dance classes? Yeah. It's so obvious now, right? So September, I'm going to enroll my inner child into dance classes, right? So it's like, that's the path of the person who is, I would even say, childless after they get through the mourning and they come to acceptance and say they can't ever have kids. It's about them doing the inner work to heal their inner child, right? So that's the piece that mothers, I would say, actually, as much as you might be strained and drained and all of this, you get the chance to see your inner child dancing in the world. And how do you parent that child? And there's still then you have to deal with your own emotions of, oh my God, I didn't get this as a kid, or oh my God, that's what, like I see myself in my, without projecting, but like you get to do that work on a daily basis, which is pretty cool.
Yes. And you don't get to take a break, which is in personal growth work. Sometimes it's nice to just say, I'm just going to watch a movie now.
Totally. Totally. Yeah.
Yes.
You don't have to deal with it all the time.
Yes.
And the guilt of the parent, right? I should be doing more and not enough. I keep heard it. I would say parenting is an ongoing exercise of feeling like you're failing all the time when you're actually succeeding.
That's an interesting perspective on it.
It's never enough, right? The kid will always throw a curveball in, or life will throw a curveball.
We often do it to ourselves, but we'll just, yes, I think that's, yes, there's truth to that. The truth bells are ringing. So I think, thank you very much for this conversation. I have a feeling that there might be a part 3 coming up at some point if you're game. But I will give you, I realize I forgot, I'm still getting used to Momtellectuals. Yeah. Not everybody, we have a saying in our house, who makes mistakes? Everyone. So I did not give you a chance to do your brief bio at the beginning of part 2. So okay. Yeah. I will get you to do that right now as we, we'll say hi for now, but Heather, I'm going to get you, I don't even know if I said your name.
Hey, Heather Warren, Blossoming Heart Guidance. And so I do personal growth life coaching. I help those who want to recover from stressful circumstances, to get their mojo back, find the love within. I especially work with people who are still recovering from breakups or losses. And I'm also a children's author, and that's one of my books, The Stellar Queen of Oaxaca, and it's based on my journeys in Mexico. So that's me. Cool.
Okay, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you, Tamsen.
This was as amazing as I thought it would be. Thank you.
Awesome, and I really hope it speaks to your listeners. I thank you very much for giving voice to this. I think it's an important conversation for many women.
It's so important for us to be able to figure out what we want.
Yes.
Okay, thanks. Have a great day.
Bye. Thanks, Tamsen.
Bye.